Thor is directed by Kenneth Branagh and stars the Chris Heartthrob Hemsworth, and this is the legendary Norse story of the god of thunder Thor, but this story takes us to him taking the throne of Asgard from his father Odin. But oh no, wait, the frost giants have come, so Thor goes to defeat them and teach them a lesson, but Odin's not happy because it's gotten rid of a truce that's been around for years, so he banishes him to Earth and says that he's not worthy of the hammer. Let's see how that ends up. So this is the first time we've been introduced to anything sort of weird and mythical and godlike, and anything away from Earth, to Asgard, this glorious place with a giant palace in the middle of it. And it's the one, you know, the first one with actual powers that's, you know, it's lightning out of a huge hammer, like classic heroes in a comic book. Cool. I really do think they chose the right director for this movie. Kenneth Branagh is of course an actor, but he's also a Shakespearean actor. And when you're getting all these sort of Shakespearean elements into a movie, it's pretty cool. He does have a quite basic story about redemption. It's been done a million times before. We've all seen that kind of story. But by jingle, he got it right! Give credit where credit's due. When you're the first person who has to direct something where Viking gods come to Earth and sort of, you know, just fuck up your entire scenario, you've got a lot to work with there, and yeah, kudos to you, buddy. This is also the first real time we get an actual involvement with S.H.I.E.L.D. They take all of Jane's research away once Mjolnir hits the ground, when everyone tries to get it out of the ground in this huge crater that it won't come out of, because obviously the people trying to get it aren't worthy. There's all these things with S.H.I.E.L.D. It's a really, really cool little thing where Thor runs around the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. complex to try and get Mjolnir back. One of my favourite scenes, you know, him covered in the rain trying to get it out of the ground, and Loki trying to get it when he tricks Thor when he comes over to tell Odin is dead. Really, really good elements. There's also the introduction of Hawkeye in this movie. He's known as Agent Barton, but if you know the story later on, you know that it's Hawkeye up there. That's a pretty cool thing to do. I really do think there's actually a lot more things that introduce in this movie than people give it credit for. That can't be bad. Yes, this story has been told 1,000 times before in other movies, but the plot's a lot better than other Thor plot lines. Yet another piece of perfect hero casting here by Marvel. Famously, Chris was actually against his brother Liam, who went on to go and do the Hunger Games movies, but I really do think that Chris has the sense of humour. He got huge for the role, as is obviously famous. This sense of humour is brought on in other movies. That comes at a later time in this video series. Don't you worry about that one. I really do think that he has a sense of excitement as soon as you see him go to Odin to accept the crown. Excitement, naivety. He wants to do what's best for Asgard, but he doesn't do it in the noble way. It's a real cool sort of catch-22 about what he's got to do. He wants to just get on and make sure people know that Asgard is not to be fucked with, but at the same time he needs to act like a king. I love that thing he has to contend with, and the reason why he's banished in the first place. He doesn't get that idea. He doesn't understand why. He doesn't know why being banished he can't do whatever. It's a really nice concept, and one that he really needs to deal with, and Chris Hemsworth nails that to a T. During the story's epic climax, you see that he's grown up. He gets his stuff back. Okay, the most corny fucking way of getting it back in the world, and that for me is a huge downturn in this entire movie. The fact that it all sort of grows back on him and all this shit. Anyway, that's not a major part of the story as a whole. That epic climax is touching. He knows it's his brother that's taken over. He knows that Destroyer's there to kill him, essentially to get rid of him. But he's adult. He understands what the crown needs. It's quite in depth, this film is known as probably one of the worst in a lot of people's minds, but for me the story actually goes into a lot of detailed things that you wouldn't necessarily think to happen to fucking Norse gods. This movie also brings in Eric, Darcy and Jane. I don't mind them, they're there for expositional parts to get Thor into the world. Darcy, for me personally, I don't get why she's there. She just sort of says quippy one-liners and tries very, very hard to be funny. Really didn't like that at all. And she just sort of walks around saying that Thor's hot or tries to annoy Eric or whatever. There's never a huge story for her to be in. If you want to look at anyone in this movie that isn't a Norse god, look at Eric and Jane. They're the people that give you all the expositional dialogue. They help Thor in certain expositional ways. If anything, in the entire Thor series, they're the only two you really need to look at. Other than that, I don't think anyone that isn't throwing a hammer around is actually any good. Oh yeah, and before we move on to villains, Anthony Hopkins as Odin. Oh my god, yes! Much like other MCU movies, this one puts in quite a few villains, but there is one in the MCU that this movie really brings in for me. Okay, so yes, at the start of the movie we get the pretty cool expositional part about the frost giants, and we see the huge fight with that weird dog thing and the frost giants themselves at the start, and they kind of are the main villains, but they are nothing on the Lord, the Master, the God of Mischief. Loki for me is one of the best Marvel villains out there. He steals the show in pretty much every scene for me. He outacts everyone. Him and Anthony Hopkins are like there with each other in their huge expositional parts about Loki's past. My god, I love Loki. I love Loki. Tom Hiddleston is the perfect person for Loki in this movie. I would put his character on akin for me in terms of watching this movie in like The Dark Knight. I don't give a shit about any point about The Dark Knight that hasn't got the Joker in it. The rest of it's dull, right? This movie I think is the same. The parts with Loki, with Tom Hiddleston really stretching his acting muscles, fucking blow me away. I love him in this movie. He's like the main reason I rewatched Thor again. And the fact that Loki's story is pretty in depth. He finds out he is the son of a frost giant in this movie, yet he has been lied to by Odin his entire life and told that he's the son of Odin. How it's horrible, and he will not be told the truth. No one will tell him because that's not what they want him to do. They don't want him to go off. Of course he will. He's basically a child. I love a character with depth, especially in movies that they struggle to get depth in their villains. What other way to, other reason to latch out other than you want to know who your family is? That's awesome. In conclusion, yeah, I think this movie's good, but it has a lot of things wrong with it. Most of the other movies are taken in really big places, big cities, or they have pretty big premises about them. This one's based in a small town in New Mexico, which makes this whole God of Thunder feel like a puny boy from Mexico. It's weird. It's just so shit, that location. It's nowhere. It is nothing. It's a shit. If you blow up that small town in New Mexico, it's nothing compared to what's happened so far and what's going to happen later. It's just like the smallest thing in the world. I don't understand that. The only reason this movie pushes forward is because of the actions of Loki. Without him, this would just be a god getting his hammer back, but with just him finding out that he needs to be nice. Loki's other parts of this movie make this movie more compelling than it is. That kind of shows how reliant they are on Tom Hiddleston's acting, because the story, if you look at it, is pretty weak. in terms of other things that have happened so far, it's really like a wet sponge. While this isn't the strongest movie, I do still enjoy it. There's just a couple of reasons, as well as the ones I've mentioned, that don't make it amazing. Thanks Kat Dennings and Natalie Portman. So in my epically marvellous list, this movie goes in at number 16. So there's Thor, guys, and if we're going to carry on this road, the next movie on my list is Captain America, the First Avenger. So yeah guys, can't wait to show you that. That is next on this massive list of reviewing all the movies so far in the MCU. Until next time guys, this is your friendly neighbourhood ginger guy saying, Ginger out.